to say about Finnish heavy rock band Xysma's latest album, No Place Like Alone, is that um, in many ways, it is the next Xysma record that isn't at all sentimental about where they've been beyond trying to perfect some of those uh, very natural ideas that they found in the late 90s or throughout the 90s as their taste shifted from underground death metal and grindcore to contemporary rock of the 90s and heavy rock, of course, but they definitely always had a bit of the old soul in them, an old, even older than the 70s. They had some 60s songwriting in them, and it started to come out back on their 1998 album before they broke up. So, yeah, 25 years later, this record comes out, and it's a good mix of modern, ancient rock music and nothing to do with death metal or grindcore. So, if you're interested in seeing if they've brought back or tributed or show any sign of being a death metal band or whatever you expect them to be, it's not there. You can just move on, and I'll let you listen to this song on the way out.
There's no way he can lose his fucking power. Get wicked dead. Gets you through a seasoning. Gets you through a seasoning. Gets you through a seasoning. Fuck
If
you.
I went through the history of Xysma beyond 1993 when their third album came out, I think it's one of the best death and roll albums ever made, one of the only good death and roll albums ever made. And you start to see that they were listening to Helmet, they were listening to all kinds of things when they started putting out rock records, and it was kind of surprising that they just didn't have a song. They did not have a hit song or a song that really uh, made their legend real. And you could see why they had faded out by 1998 is because they were still picking a direction. They were still doing just whatever they wanted, and it was all just for fun. And I mean, maybe they had aspirations or whatever, and they continued to make music in various other bands and other projects individually. So this was all like a strong variety, and I went and listened to a lot of their other bands in the interim, and just to get some context as to what they were up to over the last couple of decades. A lot of that went into this record, but they also at least tangentially looked back to Girl on the Beach and Lotto and pulled some of those same feelings back in when they were developing the melodies for these songs. But really, the big point here is that they have songs now, and every song on here is quite good in its own way. Some of it's a little bit stiff in delivery. Some of it doesn't quite get there with the hook, but most of it is just packed with detail, with attention to detail, and every moment has a point of meaning or something special about it that develops in the song, while still managing to be laid back enough in the best way in a lot of these maybe more developed songs. So I could point, to a couple of the obvious singles on here, but I think Midnight Call was kind of the piece that was like, all right, well, this is very different. It's not something I would expect based on past work, and it changes the tone of the record in a strong way, where they are having a bit of fun. They're kind of uh, being earnest while still having a bit of a character and a big personality, and a big part of that is the vocalist. Um, Janitor, who is just fantastic on this record. He's kind of the sort of bright spot at every dark moment, where he's always putting a lot into his vocal performances, putting a lot of layers. There's a lot that goes into that. Now it's a weird record and it's very different, but I think it's when I go to Finnish rock music, I want that. I want something a little bit different and personal, and the dark and the light mixing together in an interesting way, which is self-reflective, but also a little bit goofy in some ways too. So that's just my personal take on it. So anyway, I feel like heavy rock that and you're coming at this as a death metal fan, that's a weird fit. You have to kind of be maybe of a certain age or of certain expectations to get there. But this is a good record. It is a very memorable record, and one that I like. At first, I was like, well, that's different. That's cool. And then I had one of these songs stuck in my head, and I had to go back to it. And there is something that's not in my usual listening here that had me coming back to this record enough times where I could recommend it. I do think that it's a cool place to see Xysma at so many years later, and to appreciate how they kind of got there, but on their own terms in a cool way. So anyway, that's my weird taste. See if that matches up with what you think. Go check out the album, and there's a lot more detail and history on the band if you don't know them in the review. So check that out.